Greetings everybody, and thank you for 1000 subscribers. I decided to conclude my Lord of the Rings track-by-track analysis project with a Q&A for two reasons. One is because the same question will be asked over and over by different people, so I thought this would be the best way to address them all at once. And two, because I have some news for you regarding the future of my content. I made a Patreon, because that's probably the only way for me to make some money off my content. It will include polls where you can help vote on what projects you want me to make. It will have behind the scenes content like how I make the videos, how I analyze the music. I will also open a Discord group where you can join if you just want to chat about scores or composing. Knowing how other YouTubers work, this should probably go without saying, but just to be clear, I am not good at following commands. Like if I'm told to do a certain project, my interest and motivation to do it just vaporizes. I'm just saying, I'm not giving away my freedom to decide what to make. Also, as I mentioned a couple of months ago, I also started a Ko-fi account, so if you literally just want to donate money to support me, even if you have no interest in all the other things, you can do that too. And now that the promotion is done, let's get this started. Now, unsurprisingly, a lot of people asked what my favorite theme, character or scene is, so I tried to lump these a bit into categories. And to tell the truth, I don't actually like ranking things in general, because to me, it's not like I can necessarily compare a movie with another and say that this one is the better one, because different pieces of media can have different kind of impacts on you. So this might be a bit hard for me, but for your sake, I'll try. So of course, a lot of people ask me what is my favorite leitmotif from the Lord of the Rings. And if I need to pick one to represent the entire trilogy, I'll just probably go with the history of the ring. It's just so integral to the score and the vibe of the entire story. I mean, any other adventure movie would have a brassy, heroic theme like The Fellowship, or a love theme, or a homely theme. But the history of the ring is just pure vibes. But if I could decide one theme per movie, I would probably go for the themes that are most integral to the climaxes of each separate movie. For the Fellowship of the Ring, it would be Hobbit's understanding. In hindsight, it's kind of strange how little focus this theme gets after the Fellowship of the Ring, but to be fair, you could say that the Hobbits already have had their most important insights by then. Then of course in Two Towers, when Gandalf arrives with all the reinforcements, and the White Rider theme is first implied in the harmony, the trumpets, and then builds and builds until that. Oh! That's arguably a better cavalry charge than the third movie. Fight me. And for Return of the King, the destruction of the ring. Which underrated musical moment affected you the most, or stood out to you the most? I've actually already mentioned this in my analysis of For Frodo. It's the ring theme heard at the end when Sam enters Mount Doom. What was the thing that surprised me the most while unraveling the score? Probably how important weakness and redemption is as a theme for the entire score. I could probably make an entire video just about weakness and redemption and how it's integral to both Gollum's theme and Rivendell and the journey there and its relation to the Mount Doom chords and how it threads its way into the score's most subtle moments to just give it that nudge of meaning. What is my favorite piece of poetry from the score? I suppose it would depend on if I count the original language or the translation of them, but once again, if we're going to do one per language, my favorite piece of poetry in Sindarin is probably the Eagles. In Quenya would be Namarie. In Rohirric or Old English, probably go with The Missing. In Adonaic, not a lot to choose from, a ring race. In Hustul, the Balrog. And finally in English, probably The Road Goes Ever On. Do I prefer the original soundtrack or Rarity's archive version of any track, specifically Eleanor? Well, I definitely prefer the complete recordings version of the track Eleanor, because exactly as Doug has said in several interviews, the version that can be heard on Rarity's archive, which includes the Fellowship theme, is a bit too, going back to what we already know. The Shire is supposed to move into the fourth age. They're supposed to evolve away from what we're used to hearing into something new. So to have it end on that simple, it just fits the peaceful, pensive feeling of ending better. However, the theme that I'm sorely missing from the complete recordings that is on the Rarity's archive is the Realm of Gondor in Ascension that can be heard in the theatrical cut of the film while Aragorn is mowing down orcs at the end of the Battle of Minas Tirith. Also, I'm a real sucker for the original soundtrack version of The Lighting of the Beacons, where the Realm of Gondor in Decline is played in major for once, giving it a real rousing, triumphant feeling. Which character from the movies do I love the most? For characters, it's gotta be Sam. Well, nowadays, it's not too unusual to see let's say, interpretation of Frodo and Sam's relationship. But to me, that entirely misses the point of what a uniquely wholesome portrayal of platonic love between two men that they embody. Sure, gay people need representation, but if we as a society can't see this and interpret it as anything else than then I think we're starved for this kind of representation too. Which non-musical moments from the films do I love the most? See, this is what I mean. How am I even supposed to answer this? Find one moment in the entire trilogy. Even deciding one for each movie is impossible. Or can I decide one favorite action scene, one favorite comedy scene, one favorite drama scene? I've changed my mind. I retroactively regret picking a favorite for any of the other questions as well. All answers are annulled. What other score composers of film scores that I'm most fond of and that I really admire? So once again, I'm going to try to categorize these, because I think it's a bit unfair to compare a soundtrack from a game with one from a movie, for example. Hot take, I don't actually care for John Williams. I recognize that he's a level of his own, but his music just never appealed to me. Some of the ones I really do admire, however, are Clint Mansell for his score for The Fountain, which is a religious experience. The probably most played track on my old iPod was Time from the Inception soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. And he gets a lot of flack these days, but remember, this is the guy who also gave us The Lion King in Gladiator. Ennio Morricone, legend, for The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. And The Mission, especially The Mission, oh my god. And I'm a huge sucker for the original animated Disney movies. So of course I'm gonna need to mention Alan Menken too for his insanely good and catchy melodies. I suppose I really need to put a special bracket for musicals too. If you mention Alan Menken, you just need to mention Howard Ashman too. Stephen Sondheim, especially for Company, but also for, Sweeney Todd and West Side Story. Andrew Lloyd Webber, Jesus Christ Superstar, I play it almost every Easter. And recently Lin-Manuel Miranda. I noticed his work when I watched Encanto and I watched Hamilton for the first time. And oh boy did I fall for Hamilton. TV. The first TV composer I ever noticed was probably Michael Giacchino for his work on Lost. Very emotional, heart-tugging melodies. Ramin Djawadi for Game of Thrones, no-brainer there. And recently Ludwig Göransson, yes, that's how we pronounce it, for his work on The Mandalorian, which was a very fresh take on the Star Wars material. And a blast from the past. I love Moomin. Not only the original book series, but also specifically the 90s anime. And the original soundtrack by Sumio Shiratori has been part of my life, as far as I can remember. Which I suppose brings us to anime. Unsurprisingly, the big one for me is Joe Hisaishi and his work on the Ghibli movies. Spirited Away, House Moving Castle, Princess Mononoke, The Wind Rises. Just an insane discography in general. My favorite TV anime composer would be Hiroyuki Sawano, specifically for his work on Attack on Titan, which might be the subject of a coming video. But also a shout out to Susumu Hirasawa and his work on the original Berserk anime, Paprika and Paranoia Agent. And finally, probably Yuki Kajiura and her work on the Fate series and Tsubasa Chronicle. Final category, games. My oldest favorite would probably be Yoko Shimomura and her work on Kingdom Hearts. I fell off Kingdom Hearts a while ago. I still haven't played Kingdom Hearts 3, but oh, those themes are so good. Tangentially there you will also have Nobuo Uematsu and his work on the Final Fantasy series, specifically parts 7, 9 and 10. In the Western arena of video games, I would probably first put Stuart Chatwood and his work on the Prince of Persia Sands of Time. It's this real cool mix of rock and Middle Eastern music. Also the Halo series with the soundtrack by Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore. Justice for Martin. And finally probably Toby Fox and his self-made score for his self-made game Undertale. New category, project questions. What was the most interesting, meaningful and/or unexpected thing that grew out of your project for you? For example, a skill or new knowledge or personal epiphany. First off, I think that before I started working on this project, I would count myself as better at playing the piano than understanding music. I'm a self-taught piano player. I didn't learn anything about music while I was at school. Getting started, I printed out pages and pages of sheet music and was entirely focused on learning songs. But at some point, I grew tired of not understanding why music works the way that it does, and I started putting way more time and effort into learning time signatures, intervals, orchestrations, chord progressions, etc. By the time that I started this project for real, I found myself entering the process in which I once and for all got better at theory than playing the piano. You know, there are plenty of moments in the score that I feel very confident analyzing, but I can't play for shit. Secondly, this project has made me a much better writer. I have a tendency to make the same point over and over in different ways. So by giving me this drastic limitation, this small rectangle of words, I forced myself to be way more concise. By reworking the same text until I got my point across, I gradually nurtured a natural sense of brevity. It's true, you gotta kill your darlings. What was your joy to frustration ratio with the project? Well, mostly it's been a great project. I suppose the most frustrating part of the project has been hindsight. You know, watching my videos back and realizing they're full of mistakes, or that I probably should have made more assets to be more precise in exactly what tones are played, or made clear distinction between what is a hint and what is a speculation. Since more than one person actually told me that they have used my videos for inspiration for academic work, I feel like I eventually have to make a video where I make it especially clear what is official information and what is my and other people's theories. I want to go down into the nitty-gritty exactly what you ought to cite me on or not. The Lord of the Rings is often described as being operatic, while the audio and the visual are in harmony. Which scene in the films best synthesizes music and drama on the screen? Ironically, I think my first choice would be the fight between Smeagol and Deagle, but you know, that one didn't make it into the final cut. From the music that made it into the final cut, I'm probably gonna go with Boromir's Last Stand. From the way that the Isengard theme and 5-beat pattern shows us how desperate the situation is, and the choir building the tension, then the use of silence, and then the choir returning with a mournful shape is just musical storytelling at its finest. How did you come up with Monoverantus? It's just an anagram of my real name. Did you attend the Live to Projection concert? Yeah. Would you say that the idea of all things end and only the memory remains is inherently part of a score? How would you exemplify it to make it look obvious? That's a vague question. Is there a moment in the books not included in the movies that you wish Howard Shore scored? And if so, which? That's a great question. No one obvious example would be the Scouring of a Shire. That entire sequence is very fun to imagine. I think that Howard Shore probably could have made very interesting thematic choices with that sequence. Otherwise, I would probably like to have seen the Mounds of Mundberg poem incorporated into the score somehow. Do you have any more thoughts on Pippin's song? No. So, the final and probably most important category of questions. What about the future? Do I have another project that I'm considering pursuing for the future? The first thing I'm going to do is release The Voice of the Ring Part 2. It's in production right now. It includes a lot of stuff from The Return of the King, so I felt that I needed to finish those videos before I started working on this one. I've also already mentioned that there are all sorts of Lord of the Rings score-based videos that I'm going to make in the future, which I'm only trying to figure out the best format for. And on that subject, let's go to the million-dollar question, the one that so many of you have been asking me, even though I technically already have answered it. Am I going to do the Hobbit trilogy? And the answer is still no. But let me explain exactly why. As I've already told you, I don't like the Hobbit movies, and I'm not as interested in the score in general. But the most important reasons has nothing to do with me, but it has to do with Doug Adams, the author of the music of the Lord of the Rings films. Doug Adams has already written the music of the Hobbit films and are waiting for a chance to publish it. So if I bought that book and immediately started to make my own analysis videos of them, I would seriously infringe on his market. You know, the music of the Lord of the Rings films book has been out for more than 10 years. He has already earned a lot from it. But if I started to give a free alternative to his book now, like, why would people buy his book if they could get that same content for free from me? This man's work has been invaluable to me, and I could not face myself if I robbed him of his own audience. All that said, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm never going to make anything Hobbit related. Perhaps I'll make a video discussing what themes I do like from the Hobbit or how they connect to the Lord of the Rings or something like that. We'll see in the future. Another very common question, will I do the original soundtrack or the Rarities archive? Maybe. You know, there are interesting things in there that might be worth analyzing, but there's a lot less official information to go with. Like, this is a cool track, and we have the lyrics for it, but I have no idea how they pair up. Will you do the Rings of Power? If Shore scores, yes. Howard Shore's involvement in the Lord of the Rings of Power TV series has been leaked for quite some time, and the people who did leak it have been extremely correct on other things, so I'm inclined to believe them. Not to mention that Amazon themselves kinda leaked it twice already. But let's just say that if Howard Shore returns to make music for the Rings of Power, I will be there and analyze it week by week. So look forward to September, because you just might get some weekly content again. Barry McCreary has reportedly been attached on the upcoming Amazon Lord of the Rings series. Are you familiar with his work? If so, any thoughts on it? Funny that you should ask that. Because after hearing the leaks about Barry McCreary, I decided to check him out. Now, my basic impression of him wasn't actually that great. For example, I love the soundtracks for God of War series by these guys. But though I haven't played The Dad of Boy, I have listened to that soundtrack and it's basically just one theme. I also watched Foundation, which also didn't wow me. But then I watched Battlestar Galactica. Not only has it got a real unique score, it also has the coolest moment in film scoring history. I'm not joking. This is definitely getting its own video, so better watch it before I spoil the shit out of it. So yeah, I'm a bit mixed on Barry McCreary, but I have high hopes. As for other franchises, I have ideas for videos about Attack on Titan or Kingdom Hearts, but probably not more than 1 or 2. As I mentioned, I also recently got into Hamilton, and I need to make a video series about that, because its use of musical and lyrical motifs tickles exact same bone that Lord of the Rings does for me in the film scoring part. Ugh, my throat is getting sore. So that's about it. That's all the questions. What thoughts I had on my own. Let's pull back a bit. An era of my content is over. Sometimes I make the mistake of comparing myself to other YouTubers who make weekly or monthly content. It's just basically whatever they want to do. That's never been what my channel's been about ever. And from the start, my channel has been a serialized content with an obvious final destination. Now that we have reached that destination, I imagine no matter how many more videos I make from now on, a certain amount of you will only watch my track-by-track analysis. And you know, part of me think that's fine. I just want to say that if none of those other projects I mentioned earlier sound the least bit interesting to you, it's fine. It's fine. You don't need to feel any obligation to support me or follow my content anymore, because the thing is done.
It's done. Yes, Mr. Frodo. It's over now.
Sam.
Of course, I'd be really happy if you stayed with me and gave my independent work a shot. I guess it's up to me to prove whether I can make valuable content even after the Lord of the Rings score project. So I hope I'll see you again.